are your heroes? Who do you really look up to and want to emulate? My 7-year-old son is very clear. It's Spider-Man and Black Panther. Those are definitely the top of his heroes list. And I tend to appreciate the unlikely and flawed heroes that we read about in fiction. Fictional characters like Frodo Baggins or Harry Potter. In real life, though, I think it's a little harder to find heroes. People we hold in high esteem are so often pretty flawed, and it's hard to get past it. As a young girl, I idealized missionaries. They seemed like such heroes to me, going off to foreign countries to serve God. And then I went to serve and lived with a missionary family overseas for a year and realized, well, they were just like everybody else with problems and character flaws of their own. I also used to idolize pastors and priests, but that went away pretty quickly after I got to seminary. The truth is, we're all just people. There is just no one person who will never fail us or disappoint us in some way. So who can we look up to? Who can we emulate in this life? Who can inspire us by their witness? Who are the true heroes? I think we need to be inspired and encouraged to do what and to be who God called us to be. So then the question becomes, what does that look like? What does that look like in God's kingdom? Jesus is, of course, a hero in many ways. And Jesus is a hero whose witness never fails. But the example and the calling of Jesus is not always an easy one to follow. In fact, even Jesus' disciples struggled with this because as Jesus began to tell his disciples that he was going to suffer and be crucified and killed, we see in our reading today that Peter was absolutely scandalized by it. That did not fit his definition of success, of heroism that he had in mind for Jesus. That is certainly not the way of power or empire. It is not the way of the world. And so Peter goes and actually rebukes Jesus, rejecting completely this path. Peter, like most of us, wants to form his hero into his own image and by his own definition of heroism and success. And he uses the world's standards to rate that. And it certainly doesn't include laying down one's life in this sacrificial way. But we see in the reading that when Peter does that, Jesus responds with those famous, strong words, and he says, "Get behind me, Satan." You see, the way of the world, the way of empire and its standards of success and heroism, which frankly usually includes violence, is totally opposed to God's way. Being a hero in God's kingdom looks very different. And Jesus makes it clear that this path, this call of God on those who would follow him, involves denying oneself, taking up one's cross, and following him. Those that want to save their lives will lose them, he says. And those who lose their lives for his sake, they will save them. And then Jesus asks us this incredibly powerful question that I'd like us to think about today. The question is this: what will it profit you to gain the whole world and yet forfeit your life? In Matthew's version in the gospel, it's translated soul here. What would it profit you to gain everything the world offers when it will result in the loss of your deepest soul, your deepest self, your very life? You see, the world promises us much. The way of the world is a seeking after power and success, which is inevitably gained by dominating others. It turns out that it usually is a success that is gained through oppression. In fact, many of the traditional heroes in our culture are heroes that defeat others through this kind of superiority or show of strength, dominance, oppression. And it is idolizing after such heroes, such forms of success that leads to the broken systems that we have in place, systems of white supremacy, the oppression of other people groups for the benefit of those who have the power and the privilege. In fact, this past week, you might have seen the news story that the San Diego Union Tribune ran. It was an article exposing the fact that in San Diego, the rate of suspension of Black students, young Black students from the ages of kindergarten through third grade, very young, was more than double that of white students. The disparity in these rates actually just increases with age, according to the article in the study. Meanwhile, we see the news being filled with stories of hate crimes against Asian Americans during the pandemic. In fact, one of our own parishioners' relatives, someone who was born here in the U.S., was recently verbally accosted while she was on a walk and told to go back to her own country to stop spreading the virus right here in San Diego. The way of the world, this sense of superiority, this sense of domination that leads ultimately to violence, to hatred. It is exactly what Jesus is rebuking when he sees that creeping up in Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Mohandas Gandhi studied the Gospels. He understood this teaching of Jesus, this path of nonviolence, very well. If you've ever seen the movie Gandhi, you know that in the opening, he tries to explain this approach to victory through nonviolence. And he says this, "I am asking you to fight against their anger, not to provoke it. We will not strike a blow, but we will receive them. And through our pain, we will make them see their injustice. And it will hurt, as all fighting hurts. But we cannot lose. We cannot. They may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me. Then they have my dead body, not my obedience." In contrast, the way of the world invokes the call to fight and take up power and domination and arms against others to achieve one's ends. The world says, "Take up your sword." And Jesus says, "Take up your cross." Success and victory are not gained through this kind of violence and power. The battle is won through the power of sacrificial love. It is the path of humility and servanthood, not pride and domination. So I sometimes wonder, do those who claim to be followers of Jesus actually understand the call Jesus has, the call he has for his followers? Do I understand it? Because my own knee-jerk reaction is a lot like Peter's. Jesus' words make me feel uncomfortable, and I too want to prove myself and my worth, especially when I've been wronged. The impulse is to fight, but not with humility and love. And so I think we have to step back and ask, what is our goal? Who are we trying to be? Who is it we are emulating? And what is the ultimate goal of our lives? If the goal is short-term success by the world's standards, to gain the world and all it offers, then there are actually plenty of quote-unquote heroes to show us that way. But it is so short-sighted. If the goal instead is the divine plan for our lives, the road less traveled, the way of Jesus, then we must be willing to forfeit the gains of this world in order to save ourselves and our very souls into eternity. Because what does it profit me? What does it profit you to gain the whole world but forfeit our souls? The answer, of course, is nothing. C.S. Lewis summarized this concept this way. He wrote, "Aim at heaven, and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth, and you will get neither." This path of sacrifice, of self-denial and love, is a path of heroism that has been trod by others, but they are fewer and farther between. Most of them haven't been featured in films or by the media or really anywhere else. But they are there. They are featured as saints of God. They are known to God, and they may be known to some of us as well. They have left this world a better place than the way they found it. And so this Lent, we are invited to once again lay down our swords and our definitions and visions of success according to this world and become heroes of faith. Heroes that take up our cross and follow Jesus. And in doing so, gain so much more than this world could ever offer us. Amen.